On this episode, we get into the topic of politeness, discussing if Thais really are friendlier than any other country.
So if you've ever been curious about the enigmatic Thai smile, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee Kap there, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, Canadian who followed a friend to Thailand in 2001 for a 4-month vacation. He left after 12 days, and I'm still here, so I win!
No doubt. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 17 years ago, realized that Thailand would eventually legalize medical marijuana, so I never left.
You're willing to wait around that long, are you?
I just stuck around, and my dream has now come true.
Yeah, good things come to those who wait.
That's exactly right.
All right, well, first we want to say a quick thank you to one of our dear patrons, dude by the name of Victor Abbott, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Now, stick around after we're done pondering if Thais really are the friendliest country in the world to hear why Victor might be a missing Catholic priest who stole a bunch of money.
Whoa.
Crazy.
You can learn more about becoming a patron on our website. And of course, one of the cool things our patrons get is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we talk about current events in Thailand and basically whatever else comes into our minds. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about how Thai lawmakers and medical professionals took a research trip to Israel to study up on medical cannabis. And Greg also gives an update on his week-long experiment drinking Thai tap water.
Yeah, baby. Listen for all the details. All right. Well, on this episode, we're going to dig into something that almost everyone hears when they describe Thailand, and that is just how friendly Thai people are. Now, this is a little bit of a sensitive topic because we're going to be discussing how this is not always the case. So, lest anyone think we're being disrespectful, we're not. We love Thailand and Thai people. Both Ed and I married Thai people. But Thailand, like any place, has good people and bad people. But for whatever reason, Thailand has a reputation as a consistently friendly culture. So we want to ask, is that true? Does Thailand deserve this slogan? And is Thailand actually friendlier than other countries?
You know, I really like this topic because I think this is actually a many-faceted issue. It's not a simple question as it may seem.
No.
You have this kind of cool slogan, the land of smiles, which I think that it's very clever marketing. I mean, I think it's successful. You know, I think it's a successful ad campaign. Greg, you have to admit that it's at least partially true. Thai people do smile a lot. There's no doubt about that.
Sure. I think Thai people are generally very pleasant to be around, and they do smile a lot. And the land of smiles, I got to say, I think the land of smiles is probably one of the most successful ad campaigns in history.
Yeah,
because everyone knows it.
Yeah, it's definitely in the travel industry. It's up there. It's a great campaign. So I'm gonna get us started. So I know you've got your own thoughts. I've got my own thoughts. But this is how I'm going to open it up. Because the way you phrased the issue was, are Thais friendlier than other countries? And I'm going to, right off the bat, I'm going to say definitely no. And here's why. Because to me, there's a difference between being friendly and being nice. I think Thai people are incredibly nice people. I think they're easy to get along with. I think they're generally fun-loving. I think they do smile a lot. I think they don't take themselves very seriously, so they're very open to laughing at themselves. Basically, they're easygoing and they're nice people, and they're non-confrontational in general. But over the years, I have found it very difficult to become close friends with Thai people. I've talked, and I think this has come up on the show before, I think at some point, but especially Thai men. Most of my friends here in Thailand have no male Thai friends, like zero.
Same with me.
Like zero.
Same with me.
I have a couple, but I've been here 18 years, so I have a couple male Thai friends, but it's quite difficult, and but even the girls, so like we might know a lot of Thai girls that we're friendly with. but are they really good friends? Like, here's another way to frame it. After I was here a couple years, I had to go teach a class in Vietnam for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. So I was only there for 2 weeks teaching a class.
Right.
And I knew one Vietnamese girl that I had met here in Thailand, I think at a yoga class. She was just a nice girl. We exchanged emails. I went to Vietnam, and she agreed to like show me around. And one of the first things she did was invite me to have dinner at her house. And it was a little bit shocking to me because at that point I realized I had been in Thailand for, I think, about 2.5 or 3 years, and no Thai person had ever invited me to their house. And actually, to this day, after 18 years, I've never been invited to a Thai person's house that was unconnected to some business thing, or like I've done tutoring. Back in the day, I did some tutoring where I would go to the students' houses. And then sometimes after tutoring, they would ask me to stay for dinner. So I have had dinner in a Thai house with a Thai family, but it was only because I was already in the house, like tutoring some kid after school from 3 to 5, And so
right.
So to this day, I've never been invited for dinner at a Thai person's house. Maybe that's not connected to the issue, but I think that I think there is a difference between being nice and being friendly. To me, friendly means easy to be good friends with, and it's just my take. And of course, there's always the risk that it's just me, but this is what all my friends say. So I guess listeners, you're gonna have to take my word for it. I don't think it's just I don't think it's just me cannot make friends with Thai people. This is just a common thing I hear over and over again, that friends that Thai people are difficult to form deep relationships with.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't have a lot of male friends. I have a good number of female friends who are Thai, but I wouldn't consider any of them real close. A few of them are quite close, but none of them are like real close. But I want to go back to the whole idea of the land of smiles and the Thai smile. And I think part of the reason why Thailand has this reputation as being such a friendly country, it's not that it's not, but I think that because of the Thai smile, and those who know Thailand know that Thais often smile as a reaction to almost anything. So, the Thai smile, it's often confused by us foreigners as constant friendliness or like an openness and a willingness to laugh and joke and stuff. But when in reality, it can mean anything from like I don't know, to like nervous laughter or confusion or something like that. So I think part of it stems from the fact that just us dumbass foreigners have misinterpreted a cultural quirk to mean like oh, Thais are always smiling, when in fact they're just dealing with idiot tourists running around and trying to make sense of this crazy city. I think that has an element of it too.
Okay, I think I agree with that. I think that makes sense. I do think Thai people tend to smile in a broader range of situations than Westerners do, and I don't.
Very well put.
Yeah, and I don't think it's just confusion. And I do remember on one of my earlier shows, it might have been one of my first 2 shows I did, where we talked a little bit about this topic, and I think I gave an example where like a tuk-tuk guy, a guy driving a tuk-tuk, like almost killed me, came within like millimeters of killing me, and then just cracked this huge smile.
Sorry about that.
Whereas I think in the West, the person would have been very apologetic, and they would have had a look on their face that was like, oh my God, I'm sorry I did that. They would have they would have had a look of shame, or I'm sorry. They would have had a regretful look. Oh my God, I'm sorry. But this guy just smiled. But I don't think he was making light of it. It's just what Thais do. They smile a lot.
It's just like their go-to default, like in step in between what happens next.
Yeah.
I've told the story on the show before about how that dog lunged at my son.
Right.
And I got really mad at the woman, and she was just sort of smiling. And that even made me more angry. But again, because I'm a big dumb oaf, I misread the situation. And
That's right.
She wasn't laughing, and she wasn't making light of the situation. But I think that was just what Thais naturally do. And let me throw out a disclaimer here. Like, we're not specialists in this at all. We're not sociologists. We're not studiers of cultural anthropology or anything like that. It's just, these are just random everyday observations by two regular guys. But
Greg, I think most of our listeners have figured out that we have no idea what we're talking about. That should be, in fact, maybe that should be like the theme of the show. Maybe we should put that on the t-shirt. We have no idea what we're talking about.
I think most people in my life know that about me, not just on the podcast. Well, it's funny because I did a quick search, just sort of as a sort of a 1,000-mile search, and a really broad one. I typed in on Google, "Are Thais friendlier than everyone else?" And you get all kinds of replies, like all over the map. People asking questions like, why are Thais the friendliest? And then the next question is, why are Thais so mean? And why do Thais hate insert nationality? So it's just, I think it's a really, really subjective yardstick to say this place is friendly. Like I said, every country has good people and bad people. I mean, Canadians are supposed to be friendly, but some of the biggest dickheads I know are Canadians. So, it goes both ways.
So it's weird because I think on the one hand, you and I both agree that Thailand does in a way deserve this title, the land of smiles, because Thai people do smile a lot. There's no doubt about it. I mean, do they smile?
Yeah.
Do they smile the most of any nation in the world? I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, when I traveled in Vietnam, I was like, wow, they smile a lot too. So I don't know if Thais literally smile more than anyone else, but I think they do smile more than Westerners on average. That an unscientific conclusion. But the question is, what does that smile mean? Like, is it a sign of real friendliness? Like, in my opinion, it's part of this Thai cultural trait of being non-confrontational. To me, this is like one of the defining Thai characteristics, is that, and this is why they smile so much even in negative situations. Even when they almost run you over, they smile because they're in constant diffusing conflict mode. Like, they're very good at diffusing conflict and keeping things light. Like, I think this is like a key Thai trait, is like they diffuse. They de-escalate. Like, they're not escalators. They're not confrontational people, and they're just very good at diffusing things and keeping things light.
Yeah, and of course, all of this is coming from a foreigner's point of view. So throw into that, a language barrier, a cultural barrier, the way we look, or at least the way I look. I mean, I'm a big, scary dude, so people often are intimidated by me. So there's all these extra little eddies in this current that maybe confuse and mix up the sort of reading that you or I would get from a typical situation.
Definitely. But another point I want to make on this question of kind of politeness, which this is something that it took me a while to figure this out. And it has to do with the definition of what it means to be polite. So I think in general, there's a stereotype that Asians are more polite than Westerners. We're supposed to be loud and obnoxious and maybe a bit rude or arrogant or full of ourselves. And Asians are supposed to be kind of polite and more demure and maybe a little bit more shy, especially in like public. They're supposed to be like the kind of stereotype of Asians is that they're less egotistical than Westerners. And I think, maybe there is some truth to that stereotype. But what I've discovered is that it really depends on the specific situation and what you consider polite or not. Because after living here for a while, I realized that Thais do some things that I consider very rude. But that's just by my American standards. Like in Thai culture, what they're doing is not actually rude.
Like picking their nose or something like that?
Well, that's a classic one. I definitely do think Thai people just pick their nose more than Westerners do. It's just, for some reason, they don't consider it as offensive as we do. But you and I have talked about this before, and this is something that I noticed my first week in Thailand, and I still notice it. It's the tendency for Thai staff to hover around you when you're in a shop or store. So we've talked about it many times.
I don't know if it's rude. It's just annoying as hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, and it still happens. Like, I was just in the mall this week, and you go into a shop, and one or sometimes two people will just follow you around, and by Western standards, it's rude. It's rude, but they are not being rude in Thai standards. They think they're being nice and polite and helpful. So this is part of the problem. Like, when you ask the question, are Thai people polite? It's just a hard question to answer because it really depends on how you define politeness.
And it also depends on your individual situation too. Like I said, it's a very subjective measurement. Some Australian lout who comes to Thailand and gets drunk at a full moon party and gets robbed and gets in a fight with a couple of Thai guys and they kick the shit out of him, and leave him in the surf. He's not going to be coming back saying, "Man, Thais are so friendly." He's going to be saying, "Man,
no doubt,
Thais are jerks." But that was just his particular experience.
Of course.
I think it's fair to say that blank insert country are friendly people. I think most people in the world are friendly. I think that's the default of most people. But for whatever reason, Thailand just has this land of smiles thing going on. They have the cultural quirk of smiling in weird situations. To us Westerners, it's a weird situation. And you mix that all together and it just sort of comes out as Thai people being very friendly. And I think that's also why people still get scammed so much here, is because this land of smiles thing has been so successful that people just think that, well, there's no jerks in Thailand, there's no terrible people in Thailand, there's no bad guys in Thailand, everyone's friendly all the time. That's just not the case.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think you're probably right. I think that a lot of those tourist scammers are very smooth, and they do have a Thai smile. And I agree. That's a good point. Is that I do think a lot of tourists get taken in by the Thai smile, and thinking that like all Thais are trustworthy, which is certainly not true. That's not true in any country.
Right. Whereas I think if the average tourist went to, say, like Moscow, sorry, Maria, our favorite patron from Russia, and some guy approached you on the street and said, "Hey, it's closed today," you probably wouldn't be like, "Oh, well, where can I go?" I just
that's funny, right? Exactly.
Sorry to pick on Russians, but
right.
They don't have a reputation as like the warmest, friendliest people in the world, whereas Thais, for whatever reason, maybe do.
That's right.
I think. So that might be a preconceived notion on the part of a visitor.
Getting back to this whole issue of like Thais hovering in stores, I just realized that this week I saw a story about, I think it was a store in Korea. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a Korean store.
Yeah, and I thought this was genius because in this Korean store, when you walk in the store, you can choose one of two baskets that are color-coded. And one color basket means I want help. But if you grab the other color basket, it means you want to be left alone.
It's genius.
Genius. Literally genius. And I would strongly encourage, if there's any Thai retailers listening to our podcast, this would be a great thing because I find it consistently annoying, this kind of hovering, the idea of hovering help. But that wasn't my only example of what I think are just different definitions of politeness. Even though I think Thais in general are non-confrontational, there are exceptions to that. Thai people are famous for asking you directly how old you are, because
and how much you make.
That's right. It's part of Thai culture, a status thing. They want to know how old you are because they want to know how to talk to you. They often ask, how much money do you make, much sooner than a Westerner would ask that of another person. Like, you might ask someone that after you knew them for a while, but never someone I met in a conversation.
Dude, I've known you for 15 years. I have no clue what your salary is.
Yeah, right. And the other thing is weight. Thai people talk directly about other people's weight more than Westerners do. Like Thai people will just say to each other, "You're getting fat," And my sisters would never say that to each other, and like my American friends who are women would never say that directly to each other.
I think I've talked about it before too, and I said when I first came to Thailand, I had to get used to having I had to get a bulletproof ego, because in Canada, if someone described me, they would say, Greg, like big guy, kind of thin hair. But in Thailand, they're like, Greg, the fat bald guy.
Right.
Like right to the point.
Like
there's no sugarcoating on it.
The huge buffalo guy, the giant buffalo looking guy.
Yeah, right. And from a Westerner's perspective, like if someone was particularly sensitive, that would be hugely offensive, and they would not come away saying Thais are friendly people. But you do have to understand the culture a bit deeper and learn how to roll with it.
Yeah, I had an American friend here who I guess she would be classified as overweight, but she really was not particularly overweight at all. Chubby, I guess you could call her. Pleasantly plump, let's say. Right. But she told me she was in a Siam Square, and she was trying to find clothes, and one of the staff there said, like, "You're so fat, we don't have clothes for you." And it's like, I don't.
The pain is real.
I don't think staff people in the U.S. would say that. Sorry, you're too fat.
No, no. God, can you imagine that? Oh,
so
man.
it's weird.
That would be on social media all the time.
Now, to take the other side of the coin, I do think that in public, Thai people are more shy and just more low key. Like among my students, because I've taught American students before, and among my Thai students, very few of my Thai students have like big outgoing personalities. Like they're just not in your face. Like they are more low key. So I mean, I think that stereotype. I guess it's a stereotype of all Asians in a way, that in public they just tend to be more low key, a little bit shy. They're not obnoxious. Like I've had very few like loud students. Like whereas in the States, there's always some obnoxious guy in your class. Like I've just had many like loudmouths in the States. Like
right.
I mean, I'd have to really think. I can barely even think of one of my Thai students who I would classify as like a loudmouth who wouldn't shut up and said obnoxious things.
I read somewhere that someone said that is sort of a byproduct of Thailand's culture being classist. So like you mentioned earlier, when they ask you how much you make or how old are you, so they can figure out the hierarchy of your relationship. Right. So I think Thais sort of are used to putting themselves out there until they know how that should look.
Right.
You know, whereas us, we bust into a room and be like, hey, who's in charge here? You know, but Thais need to know who's in charge. They're much more subtle about it.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, but it's just amazing considering how long I've been teaching in Thailand, and I've had literally thousands of Thai students. I can't think of one student I would classify as obnoxious. Not even one.
That's good. Good for you.
You know, if I was teaching a class of like 15 Americans, there's almost like one guarantee of like one obnoxious person.
Right, like a kid who's going to spit on the teacher, or, you know, storm out of class or something.
Well, okay, that's a bit extreme, but I mean, I don't teach like young kids, but I mean, it's just when I remember specifically a class of Americans I taught back in the day. I think I was teaching like an SAT class, and they were all Americans, and they were just obnoxious and like challenging me and kind of teasing me and just. I don't know. It had a completely different vibe than a class of Thais. Like it really was good for me to go from teaching a class of Thais to teaching a class of Americans, because having been used to teaching Thais, now I'm teaching like fellow citizens, and my immediate reaction of teaching Americans, these American kids, was, "Wow, you're a bunch of jerks."
Really?
Yeah. Like I really was like, wow, like you are way ruder than my Thai students. Now, I did adapt. I think it was a little bit of a reverse culture shock, because I was teaching in Thailand, and I'd been teaching Thais for about 3 years in a row. And then I got placed in this class of all American kids going to ISB, so they're all like ISB kids. So maybe another factor was that they were like well-to-do American kids. Could have been another factor too. And I ended up liking them and getting along with them, but it was a little bit of a shock to go into a class with, these well-educated American kids, and they were pretty obnoxious, to be honest. They were obnoxious.
Well, as I was doing some Googling around and trying to find out some more information here, I came across this one reply that someone on Quora wrote, and I thought it actually was really a really perfect reply. So the question on Quora was, are Thais the friendliest people in the world, or something to that effect? And this guy named Ryan McGovern, his answer, I think, is just really, really succinct. And he says, they're not. Woe betide the one who gets on the wrong side of a Thai. Then they become all-out psychopaths that won't stop until you're dead. This is a generalization, of course. Thai people are very nice, but there's this misconception that they're always friendly. Only a fool is friendly all the time, and Thai people are no fools.
Well, I think that's, of course, true. In the end, my answer to this question is a little bit complicated, because if you phrase it as, are Thais friendly, like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't think so. If friendly means like willingness to establish like true friendships, I don't think they are, and it's not just me. It's like many people have said this. But But I do think Thai people live up to the reputation of being nice and easygoing and non-confrontational. Like, Thais just do not give you shit very much that's not good-hearted. Like Thais, like Thais don't get in your face and mess with you the way Westerners do. It's like like when I used to go out in the States a lot with my friends, the chance of some friction with someone was like fairly good. Like, I'm not saying like some serious friction like a fist fight, but the idea of having some negative interaction with someone is fairly common. It's like if you go out like 5 times in the States, you're going to have friction with somebody like once or twice.
That's a good way to put it. Maybe they should change the slogan from the land of smiles to the land of low friction.
No, but that's what it is. That's exactly what I think it is. It's a land of low friction, because it's like, and I've gone out in Thailand like 1,000 times, and like I actually had friction with a guy one time, and he wasn't even Thai. He was Indian. It's like the only person out on the town that I had like friction with, like uncomfortable friction, was an Indian guy who thought I took his girlfriend's seat, and that's in 18 years. So I've never had any friction with like a Thai person, like in a social setting.
Land of low friction. There we go.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah,
we
want 5 baht every time someone uses it.
That's right.
All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or leave. And that's where one of us surprises the other guy with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or hate so much that it makes us want to leave forever. And this week, it's my turn, and I got a suggestion from our buddy Cody, who is a patron of ours. I met him for lunch, or not lunch, but quick coffee the other day. A really nice guy from Alaska, and he's actually thinking of moving to Bangkok. So hopefully that takes place and we can hang out more, because he's a cool dude. But he suggested something to me, and I was like, yeah, that's a good one. So Ed, what do you think about when you go over to a typical Thai townhouse, house, condo, most condos, I think maybe not as much, but mostly townhouses and houses, they always seem to have the white tile floor. Does this bug you?
Interesting question. I'm going to immediately say no, because I got to be honest, it's never really bugged me. But I do know exactly what you're talking about. And it does seem to be this like incredibly common, just standard design, and it doesn't really make sense. And yeah, but I'm not sure it really bothers me. What about, like, it bothers you? Like, what?
It's not the tiles themselves that bother me, because I mean, if you spill something, it's easy to mop up. I guess it makes sense in that kind of idea. But these tiles are about, I don't know, about 80 centimeters by 80 centimeters square usually, and it's not the tiles themselves. It's just that it's so common. It's like the default floor for any house that's built in Thailand.
Agreed. It's like a generic flooring that you see everywhere. That's right.
Yeah, and it's just so bland and boring, and there's not even any texture on them. It's just a flat, shiny tile surface, and you just see them all the time, and there's nothing interesting about it.
Right. Well, I'm presuming that they must be made in Thailand, and they must be dirt cheap, because you're right, they're everywhere. This might, what this reminds me of? This reminds me of our complaint about a lot of bars and restaurants in Thailand, is that many bars and restaurants are virtual copies of other ones, and it's so there's not that many bars that are just totally unique with their own personality. Maybe that carries over to like interior design, where it's just like a lot of houses on the inside, they just look exactly the same. Yeah,
and it's so weird because Thailand has such cool architecture, such neat flourishes that are, the roofs of the houses and the temples and things like that. But then you go inside, especially in new houses, older houses not so much. But any new condo that's built is most likely got just a very boring white tile floor.
Yeah.
And I loathe it. I think it's just, you go inside and you're like, ugh, another tile floor. Maybe I'm drilling down a bit too specifically here, but
maybe Greg was really meant to be an interior designer, a very unusual looking interior designer.
I think I just love hardwood floors, maybe, and it's just deep in my soul.
Yeah, you're just a wood guy. That's who you are.
That's right. I'm a wood spirit.
So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, We'd like to say thank you to Victor Abbott for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Victor?
Well, as it turns out, our buddy Victor is from Vancouver, and it's my neck of the woods. And he says he spent some time in Thailand back in the day, but he hinted very vaguely that he might not be welcome back here anytime soon. I was like, He didn't get into details, but I started thinking, Victor Abbott is a pretty suspicious sounding name, don't you think? I mean, it's very regal, it's very royal, and
Agreed.
you know, most of our listeners are real, like, you know, just real salt of the earth, good people, and Victor Abbott sounds like a bit more of a regal name.
Agreed.
So, so I started doing some digging around. It sounds like Victory Abbott, like a victorious priest, like a priest maybe who got away with something. So I started Googling around, and Ed, I think I got him.
Really?
Now, this is true. From the New York Times in 2006, quote, Florida priests accused of stealing millions. 2 Roman Catholic priests stole millions of dollars in offerings and gifts made to their parish as far back as 40 years ago. The Reverend Francis Guinan, who succeeded Monsignor Scahan 3 years ago, has disappeared and is being sought, city police and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement said. Father Guinan is accused of having stolen an unspecified amount of money to take gambling trips to Las Vegas and the Bahamas.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think Victor is really this Francis guy who disappeared, but he was so proud of his escape that he just had to stick it to the man one last time. Called himself Victor Abbott. You know, dude travels. He loves to gamble. I think when Victor said he's not welcome back to Thailand, I think it's because he came here and maybe won big at the casinos in Cambodia and jetted off to Vancouver.
Wow. Well, let me just say this to all of our patrons out there. We don't care where you got the money that you send us. We're good. We're good with
That's
whatever.
Right.
We don't ask any questions. No questions asked to our patrons.
That's right. Well, thanks for your support, Victor. We do appreciate it, sir. And
no matter where the money came from, we appreciate it.
If it was intended for God or intended for the Bangkok podcast, to be honest, I can't really tell the difference. But we appreciate it. So thanks for your support, man. And stay warm over there during the Canadian winter.
No doubt. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our lovely patrons. As you know, we don't run ads, we don't have sponsors, so we really, really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. If you want to learn more, just head over to bangkokpodcast.com/support. And if you want to get in touch with us, it's easy. Bangkok Podcast on all social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We are very polite by both Thai and Western standards. So if you write, we will answer.
Yeah, and you can also find us online where we post each episode and carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.
See you next week. Oh shit, what's going on? Oh shit, we're already recording. Oh, we're already recording, right? Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What have you been talking about? Have you said anything sensitive or negative?
Yeah, really.
Got you on the record, man.